I suspect that to many of you viewers, it's not news that I got COVID in late April. If you've been following me in social media or you read my recent Medium piece, What COVID Has Been Teaching Me, that I'll link to below, it's not a surprise, but you might find interesting sort of the reflections and experiences that I've been having as one symptom in particular has not eased up. And as I've moved into what nowadays they're calling by a variety of names, the most prevalent of which is long COVID. So I'm going to talk about quite a few things in this video. I don't want to hear in comments any conspiracy theory nonsense or, stuff like that or advice. I'm not looking for that sort of thing. This is not like an open forum discussion on it. I'm just sharing my experiences and my own reflections about it with people who are interested. So if you're not interested in that, you want to move away to some other video. If you are interested in it, here it is. So like I said, late April, sort of the end point of the semester at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, where I was teaching 3 classes, and not a little past the midpoint for Carthage College, where I was also teaching an online class. And I'm pretty sure where I picked it up from. We've been very careful, my wife and I, because now that I think about it, I'm actually immune compromised, and so is she. So from the very beginning of the pandemic, we've been careful about, social distancing and masking and that sort of thing. We got our vaccinations, but, lots and lots and lots of people, especially in the time that I was getting it, wound up getting COVID even with that. And, fortunately, if you're vaccinated, it helps you out quite a bit. So I'm pretty sure I got it at Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, specifically at gallery night. At Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, the seniors all do senior theses, which are really important projects where, it's like a capstone. They're bringing all this, and each of them has like their own little booth in the various galleries or other places where these are set up. And the public and the professors and family members and all sorts of others are invited to come in and check it out. So I was there, and that's I'm pretty sure that's where I ended up picking it up, because lots and lots of people packed into fairly closed spaces. I wasn't wearing a mask, although I probably should have been at that time. I was getting a little bit overconfident, probably, and very few other people were, except, fortunately, a lot of the students were. And so that's when I probably picked it up. And, then a few days later, I started having some symptoms, and I thought it was actually like seasonal allergies, because I have, some pretty bad ones to various kinds of pollen, specifically oak pollen, but other things as well. And, I started having some sinus pressure and a runny nose and sneezing a good bit. And some of the congestion was getting down into my chest. And I was starting to get a bit, fatigued and some body aches and some joint aches. And, I'm a kind of person who's in pain pretty much every day because of different issues. So I just kind of wrote that stuff off. And I was like, this isn't great. Maybe I'll take some painkillers, started getting sinus headaches and stuff like that. And it got worse and worse and worse, and eventually it got to the point where my wife looked at me and she's like, "Man, you don't look good at all." And I was like, "I don't feel good." And so she's like, "We need to take your temperature." So she did, and then she's like, "Ooh, 101 point something. That's pretty high. My normal body temperature is 98.0. I'm a little bit on the cold side." So we had at-home COVID tests, and she's like, "I think you better take a COVID test." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So we did it. You got to do the nasal swab thing and stir it around and all that sort of stuff. And it could take up to 15 minutes. It didn't even take 5 minutes before, the bars appeared, and she's like, "Oh man, you've got COVID, and you've been sitting next to me. We got to isolate now." So I came upstairs. She stayed downstairs. And, what ensued was a lot of really careful procedures on our part to try to make sure that she didn't get it, because it's more dangerous if she does, even though that she's, she was triple vaxxed and all of that as well. So, I had to isolate, and, I was laying in bed much of the time and trying to drink as much water as possible and blowing my nose what felt like constantly, and, alternating between sleeping and waking. And, fortunately, I didn't have any nausea or anything like that. It was all sinus, respiratory, fatigue, that sort of thing. And, I could, I was teaching mostly online classes. Obviously, I couldn't go in for my face-to-face class. And, we finished out the semester. I couldn't do some of the things that I'd planned to do, like create videos for my medieval philosophy class, because I couldn't get in front of the chalkboard. I was too wiped out, so... that went on for a while. I started feeling better. The first 3-4 days were pretty rough, but I was never in danger of hospitalization, thank goodness. And then, I started feeling better. At first I could only read really easy, breezy science fiction books, and then I started reading philosophy stuff again, and I watched my way through a lot of shows, and that all that sort of business. And then I started feeling better and better, and then I started getting kind of stir crazy about being stuck up here, and then came a negative test. A good ways in, I think maybe 10 days or somewhere around there after the initial test. And so that meant I could move around the cabinet, so to speak, right? But I was still pretty, tired and weak, and still having, some sinus stuff, although most of the other stuff had gone away. And then it got better and better and better, and, finished out the semester, got my grades in, started, taking short walks, and, going out and doing things, going getting some coffee and stuff like that. And something that I had in, the COVID itself, in the period of, serious infection, didn't go away. This fatigue that I've been having that is unpredictable in one sense, but predictable in another sense. It's sudden and it's massive. It is like a switch flipping or like a curtain coming down. I'm fine, and then I'm wiped out. And that's it for the day, basically. I mean, I could watch a show or read a book, but I'm not going to shoot a video. I won't have the energy to do it, or anything that requires, serious thought or real engagement or anything like that. So this has become a pretty, standard feature, you could say, in my post-COVID life. And this is the sort of thing that people started saying, oh, you've got long COVID, right? And I was like, I don't know if I've had this long enough to have long COVID. Isn't that more for people who are really having debilitating effects for months and months afterwards? And so today I went and looked it up, and so there's a lot of names, right? Long COVID, long haul COVID, post-COVID conditions. There's a variety of different names for this. And the CDC, which I consider to be reliable, says that if you're still having symptoms, and they list what the symptoms would be, 4 weeks after infection, then that can be considered long COVID. So at this point, at the end of May, it's more than 4 weeks. It doesn't show signs of really changing that much, although maybe it's getting a bit better in certain respects, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And it's quite interesting. I found out a lot today by going to the CDC website. For example, that long COVID can be considered a disability under the Americans with Disability Act. I don't think I qualify for that in any way, but it's good to know that it's out there. It started provoking a lot of thinking on my part and my wife's part. And she pointed out to me something that I keep on forgetting about, namely that I got a compromised system anyway. I've when I was a kid in high school, I had mononucleosis. I've had Lyme's twice, so it's not like, my system is a car fresh off the lot or something. I've been running pretty hard for a long time, dealing with a number of different kinds of illness for a while. And so it's not all that, strange that COVID effects could linger. And talking with other people, some of them have a similar effect. And, for some it went away, for some it didn't. And so, what are the things that are relevant? Again, from the CDC website, tiredness or fatigue that interferes with daily life. And they give you all sorts of examples of, interfering with daily life. And yeah, that's the case. My first thing is to think about my work, but it also interferes with exercise. It also interferes with getting housework done that I want to do. And, it's a thing. And then symptoms that get worse after physical or mental effort. I think that's kind of connected to it. That's the fatigue gets worse because I work, and then I run out of energy and I'm done, And what is this fatigue like? I mentioned earlier that it is quite sudden when it happens. You know that you're fatigued as soon as you start feeling it, because it's like somebody turning a dial instead of like going first to 1, then to 2, then to 3 or something like that. It's like they go to 7 right away. And it doesn't usually go to 10, right? Or the spinal tap 11, but it's like a 6 to 8, and it's pretty rough. I sometimes I'm like, I got to lay down. I can't keep doing what I'm doing. And it can happen, like I said, it's unpredictable. So it could be at 2 in the afternoon. That's becoming less and less common, though. It could be at 5 o'clock. It could be 7 o'clock. It could be 10 o'clock. But when it hits, I am basically done. And, since I typically work from about 9 to 10 or 11 at night with, breaks and stuff like that. It's cutting into my work time significantly and other things that I want to do. So, when I first started having this, after most of the symptoms went away, I posted about it, and, some people were sympathetic and they're like, take it easy, man. You work really hard and you do a lot. Maybe you need to rest up and, dial back a little bit. And that was useful advice. And my wife also gave me that advice. And my dad, also. They're all like, you have a tendency to push yourself a bit too hard. This is not the time to push it. I also had some people, and it's kind of funny. People like to give advice, even if they don't know you at all, about what they did and how you should do it. And some people gave some really distinctly unhelpful advice. They're like, you just got to get back to work. And that's what I did. And I was fine. And, in this case, that's actually quite counterproductive from what people say. And I didn't do that. I've been kind of taking it easy in a measured way. I'd push myself a bit. And then when I'd get tired as a result, I'd back off, and then see what I could do the next day. My own previous tendencies in the past have been, if I get sick, that's fine. Then I recover. Then I get back up and get on the proverbial horse and start hard driving again. And that's probably not going to be a smart, a prudent, a rational approach to this. So I've been getting a good bit of rest. Some of that rest has included things like reading science fiction, fantasy works that I wanted to get to. I'm very well prepped for the worlds of speculative fiction stuff. Some of it has included, watching shows. I watched my way through Blake 7, which I really enjoyed. And trying to find ways to take it a bit easier these days. And so it's had a massive effect on my work life, which I'm not super happy about. The work, while I had COVID, obviously I wasn't getting much work done at all. I did get the grading done. I corresponded with students when I could. I did do one conference presentation, which left me totally worn out. And then I did some other online events here and there. But a little bit more measured. And so the work wasn't getting done. I haven't done that much video production as I used to, or podcast production or writing. And, my book projects are kind of on hold. Correspondence, I got quite a bit far behind in that as well. And initially I was projecting, all right, I'm going to get better. And then like every other time in the past, I'm already projecting, I'm going to get this done and this done and this done. And that's not happening. And this also applies to, working out, exercising. Nowadays I take walks, I do weight circuits, I do a few other things as well. In the past, I would try to make up for what I had missed. That's not going to be an option anymore. And so I found myself getting further and further behind, both in terms of the actual work and also in terms of my mindset. And this is part of what I want to talk with you about. Maybe this demands a different kind of attitude and perspective. Because I found myself having to deal with frustration and disappointment and some concerns. I wouldn't say they rise to the level of fears yet, but maybe they should, about what's my body going to be capable of and my mind capable of down the line. And I'll cop to it. I feel kind of a sense of what would you call it? It's not embarrassment as such. It's not shame as such, but it is a kind of a bad feeling, I didn't get this stuff done. I've let people down. I committed to things and I didn't accomplish them. That doesn't feel good, right? So there's some emotional things that go along with this, and it applies not just to my work, which is a significant portion of my life, but also to exercise, to doing things like cooking. I enjoy cooking. My wife and I are both great cooks, so we do a lot of cooking at home. Housework. I grew up in a household where there's no such thing as women's work. It's everybody works and everybody cleans, and I've been kind of lax in that. And even getting out my banjo or my bass and playing and singing, I've only done that once since I came down with COVID. So. There's a lot of changes. And it's over the last week or so, and this goes to that article that I wrote in Medium, What COVID is Teaching Me. I'm learning, this is probably a longer term thing that I need to think about. I need to rethink, I need to reflect, and I probably need to restructure, especially my work life, because it's such a big part of my life. I've had a lifestyle, since high school, really, of always doing a lot, doing more than most people do, being kind of hard driving. It's allowed me to build up, a huge number of videos and podcasts and writings and things that I've accomplished, articles, but I don't know that I'm going to be able to sustain that. And, in the past, when I wouldn't get to something, I would kind of put it off. I'd have a to-do list, and maybe I'd erase half of the to-do list for the day, and then it would go to the next day. And I would have illnesses, and the illnesses would result in pushing off to a later date the stuff that I needed to get done. But usually I'd still get it done. I'd find a way to catch up. I'll just put in some more hours, right, or something like that. And in the last decade, I've had probably a more healthy approach and attitude towards that than in previous decades, but it's still not where it really needs to be. This is a chance for me to take stock of where I currently am and what I need to do and where I'm going. So it's time to really reconsider. I'm 51 years old. I'm moving, I've moved into my 50s. This is probably, this is the second half of my life. Whether I live to 80 or 100, if you've, 50, you're definitely in the second half. And I need to think about what I want that to look like. I've probably, I've definitely built up some habits and attitudes when it comes to work that are going to be harder and harder to sustain as time goes on, as my body ages, as it seems like there's always more and more things to do. I've been very generous in the past with my time and attention and work. Sometimes even one could say kind of thoughtless or reckless with it, saying yes, yes, yes to so many things. And maybe I need to start, reconsidering that and being more selective, being more prudent about what I say yes to, And in part, I should think about, what is going to build up the kind of projects that I want built up, what's valuable in that sense, and what actually gives me joy or excitement. What's a drag? I should maybe start cutting out some of the things that I find to be just a chore or dull or not really my thing. And where can I have some serious impact for good or to prevent bad from happening? And where do my duties and commitments and obligations lie? These are all the sort of things that I need to start really thinking more about rather than just consuming time as a resource rather than being thoughtful about that stuff. I also have to take into account, I don't know how long this fatigue is going to go on for. I mean, it may be the rest of my life. And it may get worse. Maybe every day I'll be done at 2 o'clock rather than being able to work till 10 o'clock, Maybe the mornings will get lost. I got to be kind of prudent with this. Then again, it could go away tomorrow. Maybe it'll get better so that it only happens at night, doesn't happen in the afternoon. I got to start prioritizing a bit more each day, like, looking at the things that I'm scheduled to do and saying, yeah, okay, this is more important. I need to focus on this in the morning while I've got the energy, or the early afternoon. This is the optional stuff that I'll put off towards evening, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I've got to, and this is a very big, big challenge, not just for me, but for so many people, including many of my clients as well. I'm not resourceless when it comes to this, but I got to learn how to be okay, really okay, with getting less done, getting less accomplished, being able to do less. In part because, as I get older, that's probably where things go anyway. And in part because I don't need to do so much. I already do a hell of a lot anyway. So, maybe doing half of what I do would be okay. I don't know. And so, I don't have this fully worked out, but here's where I am now. And if this is useful for any of you, that's cool. If it's just you take an interest and you watch this long, that's cool too. Thanks for doing that. So, accepting the situation without lapsing into despair or pessimism. I've been pretty good about doing that so far, but that's kind of a talent I've built up anyway over these years. And I'll tell you, studying philosophy, particularly practical philosophy, particularly Stoicism, Aristotelianism, Platonism, existentialism, very helpful with all of that, I've found, so there's some fruits there. Valuing what I've actually got accomplished or produced or offered to people or was able to give or provide rather than looking at what I didn't get done, that's really important as well. Self-care is important. There's a tendency for a lot of us workaholics to skimp on that, or duty-driven people, right? And self-care doesn't just include, like, as I've been doing, reading in a nice hot bubble bath, which is one of my favorite things to do at night, or eating good food or things like that. It also includes connecting and maintaining relationships with friends and family and colleagues. It also includes the house, tidying up these always messed up bookshelves can be part of self-care, because I have to look at this stuff, right? So it's nice to have a good environment. Exercise can be part of self-care as well, so long as you're doing it in a reasonable way. I'm still pretty much a DIY, do-it-yourself kind of person when it comes to a lot of the things that I do, but might be time in my life to start thinking about finding a virtual personal assistant or something like that to do some of the stuff that I'm not that keen on doing, like I don't like scheduling, or tracking down various leads and doing the gatekeeping that separates out the people who are going to be good clients from those who are not going to be, or stuff like that. And I think I need to have less engagement with the typical unhelpful negative people, the what about people, the trolls, the gotcha guys, the I'm going to write a long screed that I want you to somehow respond to, the complainers and people like that. I mean, I do a good job of filtering out a lot of those people and blocking them if they're really a pain in social media or YouTube or stuff like that. But, maybe I don't even give them any engagement whatsoever because, my time is limited. My energy is limited. Why shouldn't I spend it on people who really are interested in ideas, and are not going to be jerks about it or obnoxious about it. And to bring this to a close, bigger picture stuff, like I mentioned, I'm 51 years old. I'm probably never going to retire because I love the sort of things that I do, but I do definitely have to think about how I'm going to find a way of doing these things that's ultimately much more sustainable, that can accommodate perhaps having long-term fatigue unpredictably hitting me at various points in the day due to COVID or, whatever else is going to come along. I have no idea what the future holds. So I need to think about, bigger picture stuff like, where's my next chapters? What do I really want to be doing? And rest assured, those of you who at hearing that are like, oh, I hope he doesn't stop doing YouTube videos. I'm going to be on YouTube. I'll stay on YouTube basically until the medium turns into something unrecognizable. I'm going to keep doing that. But, I want to get more writing done. I think I want to do more public speaking, but, certain kinds, not just pick anything whatsoever. And I want to think about what would be sustainable for me. I think this is a good goal. What would be sustainable for me into my 70s? I don't need to think about what I'm going to do in my 80s or 90s if I live that long. It's enough if I can figure out how I'm going to get from 51 to 70 and be well set up for that. And so, this has been kind of a good wake-up call for me. It's not pleasant to have COVID, and it's not good to have the fatigue, but it has been good in that respect, provoking some, thinking things out on my part that really needed to be done. And so that's it. I don't have anything more. I don't have the whole thing figured out, but hopefully this has been interesting and perhaps useful for you. If you're suffering from, COVID, long-term effects, you got my sympathy, and this is part of dealing with the problems of life. You look at ancient philosophy, illnesses are one of the things that practical philosophy helps us figure out how to deal with. So that's it for, what are we going to call this? The COVID talk or the COVID report. And I hope that all of you stay safe and healthy and move your way towards, a good life and towards happiness.